Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 8 of my Learn to Program series. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to cover reading and writing to files, tuples, and a little bit more with recursive functions. If you haven't watched any of the previous tutorials, I provided a link here in the video. You can click on that, watch the previous ones, because we are getting progressively more complex as we go on. And also in the description underneath the video, you will find a link to a transcript as well as all the code that is heavily commented that go along with this video to make it easier to learn. And I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, so the very first thing I'm going to cover here is reading and writing text to a file. Now I'm going to import a module, and this is going to be the OS module, and it's here just to help us manipulate files, as you're going to see as the tutorial progresses onwards. Now the great thing about being able to read and write files is we'll be able to store data for later use, even whenever our application's no longer running. And you'll be able to create or use an already created file with a function called open. But first off, we're going to start off by typing with. And we start the code with, and in doing so, it's going to guarantee the file will be closed if the program should crash for some reason. And then we're going to type in open, which is going to allow us to open our file. Then we're going to type in the file that we want to work with inside of quotes. After that, we're going to put down mode, and we're going to put W inside of here. And whenever we put W inside of here, that means that it's going to overwrite anything that is already inside of the file. If we would want to append to the end of the file, we would put A inside of there, but we don't want to do that. We just want to overwrite it. And then we're going to define that our encoding is going to be UTF-8. And we already talked about Unicode characters. And basically, whenever we define that we want to use UTF-8, what that is saying is that we want to store our text using Unicode. And like I said, where numbers are going to represent a whole wide range of different characters that we're going to work with. Going to then, at the end of this, define where we're going to store this file object and put a colon at the end of that. And here we can start working with it. So you can write to the file by, there's actually a bunch of different ways. I'm just going to show you one way here. You can write to the file by just referencing your file object and following that up with the write method. And then we're going to type in some random text inside of here. And we're going to put a new line inside of there because write doesn't automatically put new lines inside of there. And then we'll say more random text, and another new line, and some more. So just some junk information we just want to throw inside of there. Alright, so we wrote to the file. Now what we can do is we can come in and open the file for reading, and you're going to do that in much the same way. You're going to say open and my data and get the text file inside of there. And here you don't have to define the mode you want to work with because it is automatically going to be read if you don't put anything inside of there. And we can come in and say my file once again and put a colon. Now you're going to be able to read data in a few different ways. There is a read method, there is also a read line method, and then there is a read lines method. Now the read method is going to read everything into one string up to it gets to a new line, so it's going to read all of that stuff. Read line is going to read everything, including all your new lines, into a string, and read lines is going to return a list of every line, which is also going to include all of your new lines. I'm going to use read here just to start off, and let's say that I want to come in and I want to print out a line of text. I just go my file and then call for read. And if I run that, you're going to see some random text and and all of that stuff prints out on our screen. Now, reading everything in a file into a single string might be a good thing, or it might be a bad thing, depending upon how much data you're reading into it. Now, you can come in here and then check, because there is a close method, but because we are using with here, it's automatically going to close it, and I'll prove that right now. We can come in here and check if my file is actually closed or not by the with method, and you can see it comes back as true, meaning that the file has been closed. A couple other different methods we have here. We can get the file name associated with our file object just by typing in name, and you can see my data text comes back. We're also able to come in here and get the mode for our file. So we can just go mode, and this is going to be the last used mode, and you can see it comes back as R or read. Now getting to our OS modules that we have available to us, that we went up here and brought that inside here. These are some of the functions that are provided. You could come in here and go rename, and rename my data text into something else like my data to text, and that's going to update the name inside of your operating system. You're also going to be able to come in here and remove anything you'd like to remove or any files you'd like to remove, as long as you have permission to do so, of course. And we'll just go my data and text. Let's say we decided to delete that altogether. You're also going to be able to create directories inside of here. So let's say you wanted to go my directory, that would create a directory. We could also delete or change a directory. Just type OS-CHDIR, and that would allow us to change into the new directory that we just created. And we would also be able to come in here, let's say we wanted to find out what the current directory is before we would move into it or move around within our file system. We could do that and just go OS and get cwd. Can run that. Whoops, what's it giving me an error for here? I typed in my date instead of my data. Run it again, and there you can see it went through. And you can also see that the current directory is my directory, so you know that directory was created and we moved into it. And you could also come in and remove a directory, but the very first thing you're going to want to do is move backwards one directory. So we're going to come in here and first off move to the directory below where we currently are. So it's going to move down into the PyCharm projects out of my directory. And we can come in here and just prove that that actually is working. It's probably going to give me an error. Yeah, it gave me an error because da 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 da. And it gave me an error because I tried to create a directory that already exists. We'll just do that. And you can see here we move downwards a directory. And then we could also come in here now and remove a directory like this and say we wanted to get rid of the my directory that we actually created. And we could do so. So there's a rundown of some of the things. We're going to do a couple more things with files here in a moment. But what I'd like to do now is jump over and answer a question I received and do our first problem of the day. Now in the previous part of the tutorial we figured out how to create Fibonacci sequence numbers, and here is the function that we used previously. And if you don't remember, basically what we did was we went in here and translated this basic definition for defining the numbers that are going to fit into the Fibonacci sequence. And you can see how easy that was to do just by referring to what we have here and moving this up here and so forth and so on. One of you guys asked me how to display a whole bunch of them in a row. And so I thought, well, that would probably be a good problem for us to solve. So basically our goal here is to take this basic Fibonacci function and figure out how to define values. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to ask them how many values should be found, and they're going to type in a number. And then it's going to output in a list all of those different numbers, and whenever it gets to the very end of the list, it's going to type out all done. So you could pause the video right now and give that a go. I'm pretty sure you should be able to do it. Otherwise, I will give you a couple hints. Alright, so basically what we're going to need to do is ask how many numbers they want. I'm sure you can do that. Then what we need to do is come in here and loop. And while looping, so we're going to loop while calling for each new number. And we're going to call this function up here to execute. And then we are going to print the result and increment the value that is going to be used for this loop. So we'll come in here first, and once again, pause the video, give it a go. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how exactly I would do this. So what are we going to do? Ask how many numbers they want. So that's real simple. I'm just going to say num fib values is equal to, I'm going to cast the string that they enter inside of here using input into an integer. And I'm going to do exactly what it said previously. How many Fibonacci values should be found? Alright, so then we're going to get that. Then we're going to come down here and we're going to loop while we continue to call that function to execute. So the very first thing we need to do whenever we're using a while loop is to define the value that's going to be incremented. And then we're going to say while I is less than the num of fib values that they said they want, I'm going to call the fib function. So I'm going to just call this fib value is equal to, and I'll just call fib and pass in the value of I, which is going to be incremented. I'm then going to print out the fib value on the screen, and then of course I'm going to increment the value for I. And you may or may not remember at the very end of it, it says all done. And that's it. That's all we need to do. Let's come in here and execute how many Fibonacci values should be found, and we'll type in 20. And you're going to see that it went through and automatically calculated all those for us. So pretty neat. Hopefully you got that guy right. And now what I'm going to do is show you how to read one line at a time using files. Alright, so previously we pulled all the files into one string. This time we're going to read them one by one. So how you do that is, once again, we're going to use with and open, and I'm going to call this mydata2.text. We're going to define our encoding, once again, UTF-8. And since we're reading data, we don't have to put anything else. I'm going to store this in my file, just like I did previously. And now I'm going to come in here, and I actually want to print out on the screen what line is being read so that we can see it a little bit better. So to track that, I'm going to keep track of line number. I'm then going to use a while loop that is going to loop until the data is all read. Because I don't know how many times I need to loop, but I know I want to loop, that normally means I need to use while true, and then inside of here use a break statement to jump out whenever a condition occurs. So I'm going to use readLine to grab the very first line that's available. So I'm going to go myFile.readLine, and that's going to read one line at a time up to the new lines, like I said previously. Then I can say if not line, which basically means if line doesn't have any data. See, we're going to be looping through each line one by one, and in a situation in which line comes back with no results, meaning there's no more lines of data to read, well, in that situation we want to stop reading data. So that means we want to use a break statement. So that's going to get us out of our while loop. Then what I want to do is come in here and I'm going to print line, and then after that I'm going to print the current line number that is being incremented. And then after that, I am going to print out that line, and then I'm also going to call for there not to be a new line, and then I will increment the value for line number. And if I come in here and run this guy, it's going to come in and give me an error because with all my diddling with the OS functions, I must have deleted it. So let's go and put that information back inside of there. And there that is. And now we can run it again. And there you can see it printed out line 1, some random text, more random text, and some more. So there we were able to go in and read at one line at a time. And the reason why this is going to be useful is with the next problem, what I want you to do is I want you to cycle through each line that is going to be output, and then output the number of words per line and also the average word length. So pause your video and try to solve that problem. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how to solve it. Okay, so we're going to do something quite similar here. I'm going to go and track the line number. I'm going to, of course, read data from the file. I'm going to use while true once again to cycle through because I don't know how many lines up front we're going to be dealing with. We'll be using readLine to read one line of text at a time. We'll also come in here and we will break out as soon as there is no more information. This guy, however, is going to change, and what I'm going to actually print out here is that I'm going to get each one of those lines. And how do I, if you can remember from previous parts of the tutorial, do I take a string and split it into a list? Well, I kind of gave you the answer. We're going to be using the split function to split that out. I said one of the requirements is I find out the number of words that are going to be available to us inside of each line, and I can use the length function to find out that. Then what I want to do is cycle through each one of those characters. Well, cycle through, what's that mean? I'm going to have to loop, and I'm going to count the characters in the list, meaning each of the individual words in the list, in the, let's say, word list. And then I also wanted to find out the average length of each of the words inside of each line that we're going to be analyzing. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to divide the character count by the length of our word list. So let's come back up here and let's just do it. So after break, just to define how the information is going to go on the screen, I'm going to go print, and I'm going to say line, and then I'm going to print out line number on our screen. And then underneath of that, I want to print out all the other different things. But first thing I want to do is I want to split all of the words into a list. And to do that, I'm going to call word list is equal to, and I can get each individual line. This is where line comes from. And then just call split on it. I can get the number of words that I want to print out on the screen. So I'm just going to do it right here. I'm going to say print number of words. And I can call the length function, like I said before, and pass word list inside of it. I'm then going to be looping through the characters in our word list, and I want to count how many characters there are. So I'm going to say character count, and we'll start off at 0. Then after that, I'm going to be cycling through. I'm going to go through my word list, this guy up here, the list that I generated, and I'm going to get each individual word, and then I'm going to cycle through each character in each individual word. So a little bit trickier. And then I can go character count and increment that every single time there's a new character in each of the individual words. So now I got all the data that I need, but I need to get the average. So I'm going to call this average number of characters, and I'll just go character count divided by the length of our word list. Then I'm going to print out this information, and we're doing a division here, which means there's a good chance we're going to get a float. So I'm going to expect that there's a float that's going to be coming. So I can go average word length, and then I can use the format options that are available. Just go colon dot 2. Let's say I want to make that just 2 decimal places output on our screen. And then I can come in and get the average number of characters. And then, of course, the line number is going to be incremented each time. And we run that, and you can see it work. Came through on line 1, we have number of words comes back as 3. Average word length is 4.7, 3, 4.7, 3, 3.7. So hopefully you guys got that guy right. If not, that's okay. And my hope for you is that you just understand what's going on here. And if you see enough problems being solved, you're going to get better at solving problems. So now to finish off the tutorial, I'm going to take a look at what are called tuples. Alright, so a tuple is just like a list. The only thing that's different is that their values cannot be changed inside of the list. And tuples are going to be surrounded with parentheses instead of the square brackets that you have seen previously. So let's come in here and define a tuple. So we'll go in here and throw some values in here. And there you go, you just defined a tuple. And like I said, once these values are set, they cannot be changed. And when would you use a tuple instead of using a list? Well, whenever you don't want the values to change, just as simple as that. And you're going to get in a situation where if you want to get a value, of course, you're going to use indexes, just like you did with lists. So let's say I want the very first value inside of here. Not a problem, just go my tuple, and there's 0 indexes just like lists are. You can also come in and use slices, so we can say my tuple, and let's say that we want to get the very first item inside of the tuple up to but not including the third. That's how that's done. We can also come in and get the length or the number of values stored in our tuple using the length function just like we did previously. So length and then throw in my tuple. We're also going to be able to come in here and concatenate or join tuples. So we'll just say my tuple, and then we can create a tuple inside of here. We'll say something like 13, 21, and 34. We'll then also be able to check if a value is inside of a tuple. So we'll say something like 34 in tuple, and it's going to give us a true or a false value. And to check, you just say 34 in, and I'm going to check for my fibs. Going to be able to iterate these guys in almost exactly the same way. In, and then we'll just call this more fibs and print I. Let's run it to see what's going on. Okay, you can see right here, first value is 1. Here we grab the first 3 values. Tuple length is 5 digits, and you can see it's 5 digits. Is 32 in the tuple? Yes, it is. And also you can see right here we were able to easily iterate through our tuple. And let's do a couple more things. You're also going to be able to convert a list into a tuple. So let's just call this a list is equal to, and they're going to have the square brackets, of course, 89 and 144. And to convert a list into a tuple, let's just call this a tuple. You're just going to type in tuple, and then pass in your list. Of course, you're going to be able to convert a tuple into a list. Let's go. A list is equal to list a tuple. And finally, you're going to be able to get the minimum and maximum value inside of a tuple. So we'll just go min by using the min function, min tuple. And if you can get the min, guess what? You're probably going to be able to get the maximum value also. And guess what? You just type in max. Control R, and you can say grab the minimum number as well as the maximum number. So there you go, guys. That is a rundown of how we can both read and write files, as well as how to use tuples, a little bit more on recursive functions, and a whole bunch of different problems. New videos every Wednesday and Saturday in the morning. And please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.